You yourself are the teacher and the pupil. You are the master. You are the guru. You are the leader. You are everything.
Freemasonry, Theosophy, the New Age, and Zeitgeist movements all represent a relentless quest towards self-deification and the integration of all knowledge and spirituality in order to create a utopian society where all is one and one is all. The Bible is also in a head-on collision with this movement because, in contrast, it teaches that all is not one, all is not God, and human beings are not God. The Zeitgeist movement and Venus Project Utopia theoretically eliminates this problem of sin and human depravity, saying, essentially, that sin, evil, and crime is not caused by free will of individuals, but is a product of society, circumstantial experiences, and money.
There is no such thing as a criminal. As repeatedly expressed, the monetary system generates corruption by its very construct. As far as society today, the most fundamental condition for offensive behavior is derived from the monetary system.
In contrast, the Bible teaches that humanity's crises stem from the evil and sin of humankind. The Zeitgeist movement blames money for offensive behavior, whereas the Bible teaches the love of money is the root of all evil, bringing the cause of sin back to the individual's free will and choice. The doctrines of these movements forever removes any possible fellowship with Christians. The only obvious solution to this problem is the eradication of Christianity, as Acharya S. reveals on page 416 of her book, quoting Zeitgeist source Edward Carpenter. As for Christianity's role in this new age, Carpenter states, Christianity, therefore, as I say, must either now come frankly forward and, acknowledging its parentage from the great order of the past, seek to rehabilitate that and carry mankind one step forward in the path of evolution, or else it must perish. There is no alternative. The Apostle Paul cites the resurrection of Jesus from the dead and its subsequent effect upon all mankind as the proof that God exists, that Jesus is His Son, and that the redemption of all those who obey God and His Word is assured by His personal triumph over the grave. Obviously, the Zeitgeist movement will label the resurrection another myth, as they do with Jesus' historical existence.
A cardinal doctrine of the Christian faith is the death and resurrection of Christ. This notion is so important that the Bible itself states, "And if Christ be not risen, then is our preaching vain, and your faith is also vain."
It is easy to take the previous verse from Paul's letter to the Corinthians out of context when it is not quoted in its entirety. Paul was making a point in rebuking those who said there was no resurrection, even though Jesus was resurrected. Paul said, "But now is Christ risen from the dead, and become the first fruits of them that slept."
Yet it is very difficult to take this account literally, for not only is there no primary source denoting this supernatural event in secular history, awareness of the enormous number of pre-Christian saviors who also died and were resurrected immediately puts the story in mythological territory by association.
Also claiming that there is no primary source denoting this supernatural event in secular history is inaccurate. Unlike Zeitgeist claims about the Jesus myth, the New Testament uses primary sources. The writers of the New Testament wrote as eyewitnesses from first-hand information. In addition to the non-biblical sources, the four Gospels are primary and authentic sources for the life of Jesus. Richard Bauckham, professor of the New Testament at University of St. Andrews, Scotland, wrote in his book Jesus and the Eyewitnesses, "The Gospels were written within living memory of the events they recount. Mark's Gospel was written well within the lifetime of many witnesses, while the other three canonical Gospels were written in the period when the living eyewitnesses were becoming scarce, exactly at the point in time when their testimony would perish with them were it not put in writing. This is a highly significant fact, entailed not by unusually early datings of the Gospels, but by the generally accepted ones. We imagine the traditions passing through many minds and mouths before they reach the writers of the Gospels, but the period in question is actually that of a relatively, for the period, long lifetime.
religious belief has caused more fragmentation and conflict than any other ideology. Christianity alone has 34,000 different subgroups.
The Bible teaches Christians to be unified in love, regardless of how many professing Christians today behave contrary. Concerning church subgroups, the Apostle Paul spoke against the Corinthian church creating divisions and strife, saying it was carnal to do such in 1 Corinthians 3:3-11.
Christianity, along with all other theistic belief systems, is the fraud of the age.
On the contrary, part 1 of the movie Zeitgeist is in every respect a fraud. This film professes to present the authoritative truth on what Christianity and pagan religions teach, yet genuine academic research and scholarship blatantly refutes the vast majority of these claims and strongly supports historic Christianity. In terms of Peter Joseph's ludicrous astrological and historical assertions, there is truly nothing new under the sun.
The point raised by Zeitgeist about the book of Revelation and the end times is important for the reason that this constant talk by Christian evangelicals may actually bring about Armageddon by setting up Christians to do battle. And I firmly believe we must not let that happen.
Anybody who professes to be a Christian and does battle, as Acharya put it, is a wolf in sheep's clothing, a false prophet which is known by their fruits, according to Jesus in the Bible. Jesus disarmed every Christian by his words to Peter when he said, "Put up again thy sword into his place, for all they that take the sword shall perish with the sword." Though many wars have been fought in the name of Christianity, these wars were in direct disobedience to Jesus' commandments. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God." Jesus taught to bless them that persecute and curse you and love your enemies. The Bible says that God hates people who love violence in Psalm 11:5. John the Baptist said to do violence to no man in Luke chapter 3 verse 14. Thus the Bible leaves no exceptions for a Christian to do battle if they are to obey its teachings. Commonly, people misunderstand the difference between the Old Covenant and New Covenant. The New Covenant is God's revelation to all mankind through Jesus Christ, his Son. The Old Covenant had symbols and shadows for the Jewish people of the New Covenant. Circumcision was a symbol of spiritual circumcision of the heart. Solomon's temple was a symbol of the spiritual temple of the church. The Old Covenant had its laws written upon tablets of stone, while the New has Jesus' commandments written upon his people's hearts. And the physical battles in the Old Testament were a symbol of the spiritual warfare against sinful flesh, which does not involve physical weapons of warfare. Contrary to Acharya's interpretation, the book of Revelation is clear in that the beast or evil world empire is given power over all nations to make war with Christians and overcome them. Jesus authoritatively told Pilate, "If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight," implying that his kingdom is not of this world, and this is why the true servants of Jesus do not fight. Jesus also said, "From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force." The only way to recognize a true Christian, according to the Bible, is by their love, because God is love. Regardless of whether or not somebody calls themselves a Christian, Jesus said, "The word that I have spoken, the same shall judge him in the last day."